Imagine trading your comfortable, everyday life for a magical world, only to be kicked out before you even step foot in it, because the local goddess thinks you're too ugly. Meet Makoto, an ordinary guy who grew up reading stories about legendary heroes being summoned to alternate worlds, gaining insane godlike powers, and earning high status. He always thought it was just fantasy, until he got to experience it firsthand. It all starts on a completely normal day. Our hero has just finished school and is walking home to get some sleep. Suddenly, without warning, he finds himself standing in a bizarre space-like realm. A glowing light appears before him and introduces itself as the gatekeeper of this dimension. He informs Makoto that he's right on the verge of being transported to another world. The gatekeeper then reveals his true form and explains that he's passing Makoto along to the gatekeeper of the destination world so he can carry out his parents' mission. Naturally, our hero is baffled, so the gatekeeper drops a bomb. Makoto's parents were actually natives of that other world. Makoto is utterly shocked, but then it hits him. He'd never met a single relative on his parents' side, and now it all makes sense. The gatekeeper continues, explaining that a contract was made allowing his parents to live peaceful lives in Makoto's world, on one condition: they had to surrender the thing most precious to them. If Makoto refuses to go to the other world now, one of his sisters will be taken instead. Unwilling to let his family suffer, Makoto chooses to sacrifice himself. Respecting his choice, the gatekeeper allows him to write a farewell note to his family. He then grants Makoto special abilities to help him survive his new environment. As Makoto's body begins to fade away, the gatekeeper advises him to be patient with the next gatekeeper, warning him that she's a bit arrogant. Sure enough, Makoto gets teleported and finds himself in a strange realm bathed in radiant light. The local goddess sits on her throne, initially thrilled that the hero who will save her world from the demon race has finally arrived. But the moment she looks at his face, absolute disgust. Yeah, seriously, she hates him purely because of his looks. She ridicules him relentlessly, and when he tries to speak up and protest, she complains that even his voice is hideous. She decides on the spot to recruit different heroes for her world, leaving Makoto to live on the sidelines as an outcast. She doesn't even want to grant him her power, settling for giving him a basic translation spell so he can understand other languages. Before he can even process what just happened, she literally tosses him out of the sky into the new world. As he falls, the original gatekeeper intervenes and catches him mid-air, admitting he saw this coming. He reassures Makoto that a fall from this height won't kill him anyway. He reveals that Makoto actually possesses immense latent power that was previously sealed. Now that he's in this world, the seal is broken, and since the goddess stripped him of his title as a hero, he's free to live however he wants. With those parting words, the gatekeeper's body dissolves, having depleted a massive amount of energy just to contact him. Makoto lands in a completely desolate wasteland devoid of any life. In the distance, he catches sight of a towering mountain and decides to head toward it, hoping to find civilization. After 3 full days of walking, he finds nothing and is on the brink of starving to death. Suddenly, his thoughts are cut short by a girl screaming for help. He dashes toward the sound and finds a massive, two-headed hound attacking a young orc girl. The monster is shocked to see a human here and demands to know his identity. Without saying a word, Makoto lunges forward and pulverizes the beast in seconds. He startles himself with his own insane strength. The young orc girl is terrified and tries to run away, but Makoto lands right in front of her, asking her to stay and hear him out. Seeing what he did to the beast, she decides to treat him with utmost respect, and she's utterly baffled as to how a human can speak the monster tongue. Makoto asks where they are and if there are any human cities nearby. She replies that they are currently in the land of the dead, a wasteland considered the edge of the world, and there are 0 human cities anywhere near here. Realizing this was the goddess's doing, Makoto accepts his harsh reality. The orc girl introduces herself as Emma. Makoto asks if she's heading back to her village. She admits she was actually on her way to offer herself as a sacrifice to the great mountain dragon, hoping to clear the dense fog hovering over her town. But since Makoto saved her, she decides to take him to her village first. There, Makoto finally gets a meal for the first time in 3 days. He notices Emma using a strange force to levitate dishes and learns that this is magic, something he knows nothing about. Emma offers to teach him and casts a spell, making fire erupt from her hands. Makoto decides to give it a shot, and to everyone's surprise, he succeeds on his very first attempt. Not only that, but he shapes the fire into a destructive blast that blows away the cave walls. Emma can't believe a beginner could pull this off, so she rushes to get a measurement scroll to gauge his power level. Expecting him to be somewhere between level 200 and 300 given his destructive force, she's crushed to find out he's officially level 1. The next morning, Emma goes to wake him up, only to find he's gone. He left behind a letter explaining that he went toward the tower to solve the dragon problem as a way to repay her kindness. weakness. Before fighting, Makoto decides to practice. He casts a powerful fire spell and manages to shape it into a bow and arrow, revealing that he was a master archer back in his old world. Spotting a distant shrine, he takes aim and lands a direct hit. The problem? The fire arrow explodes, completely obliterating the shrine. He rushes over to check the damage and is shocked to find a group of ogres near death from his attack. One of them groans that Makoto destroyed the dragon's home, warning him that he will face its wrath. Suddenly, a strange red mist fills the air, and an enormous dragon appears. Within seconds, it attacks Makoto, who barely dodges in time. With his vision obscured, Makoto uses the power granted by the gatekeeper to sense the dragon's presence. Taking advantage of the fog, he bombards the dragon with a barrage of fireballs. The dragon thinks nothing of it, believing itself immune to fire, but the moment the hits land, it recoils in intense pain. In the blink of an eye, Makoto closes the distance and unleashes a flurry of devastating physical blows, knocking the dragon to the ground. Bewildered by the human's sheer power, the dragon quickly rises and constructs a barrier to trap Makoto inside, casting an illusion spell on him. Makoto suddenly finds himself back in his home world, staring at his old girlfriend crying because he left her. Meanwhile, the dragon digs through Makoto's memories and discovers he's an otherworldly visitor. The dragon's eyes light up when it stumbles upon something extremely fascinating, deciding to drop the illusion to ask him about it. On the other side, Makoto realizes it's all a mind trick, breaks free, shatters the barrier with ease, and steps out to finish the fight. Oddly enough, the dragon's attitude has completely flipped 180 degrees. It actually asks to form a pact with him, explaining the benefits they'll both gain. When Makoto asks why it had a sudden change of heart, the dragon admits it's obsessed with certain things in his memories. Thinking it's not a bad deal, Makoto agrees to the contract. The rule is simple: the stronger party becomes the master. Makoto effortlessly wins dominant standing, becoming the master of the dragon. Instantly, the dragon's form begins to shift, transforming into a beautiful young woman. Makoto asks if this is her true form, and she explains that under the contract's terms, the weaker party takes on the appearance of the stronger one. Since Makoto is superior, she assumed a human form. He notices she's wearing samurai attire and acting like one, which happened to be the exact memories she fell in love with. She introduces herself as Shun. Shun then opens a dimensional gate and invites Makoto inside to show him her personal subspace. It's supposed to be an empty, void-like realm, but the moment they step in, both are stunned to find a vast, lush expanse of greenery and natural land. Shun is confused by the sudden change, while Makoto notices fruits from his original world growing there, realizing this pocket dimension was created by merging their powers. Using his abilities, Makoto scans the entire dimension and finds it to be absurdly massive. He considers building the whole city inside it, safe from the goddess's reach. He then asks Shun about the orc sacrifices, and she has no idea what he's talking about, leading Makoto to conclude that the ogres were exploiting the dragon's name to extort orc girls. He decides they need to clear up the misunderstanding. The moment they step out of the gate, Emma comes running to stop Makoto from fighting the dragon. She's shocked to learn that the girl next to him is the dragon, and that they've bound themselves by a contract. To prove it, Shun gives Emma some dragon scales. Overcome with shock and relief, Emma faints on the spot. They head back to the village and hold a grand celebration now that the fog and the dragon threat are gone. Emma thanks Makoto from the bottom of her heart. Meanwhile, Shun sits down with the orc chief to explain everything. Wanting to express his gratitude, the chief asks how he can repay Makoto. Shun suggests that he and his entire tribe move into Makoto's subspace. The next day, Makoto is stunned to see the entire orc population carrying their belongings and bowing before him. He demands an explanation from Shun, scolding her for acting without his permission and worrying that the orcs might face danger inside. Suddenly, a mini version of Shun appears, promising to protect them from any threat. Realizing he's backed into a corner, Makoto accepts it, and Shun relocates the entire orc village into the subspace. Before long, the orcs adapt to their new life and build a cozy village. During this time, Makoto tests his magic powers and discovers he can wield all elements at varying degrees, though he leans most toward water magic. Meanwhile, Shun sits nearby watching his memories, specifically binge-watching historical samurai dramas. Tired of her constantly using him as a TV, she decides to find a way to store his memories so she can watch them anytime. As she leaves, Makoto notices his memories floating in the air, catching a glimpse of his parents. Filled with sadness over never seeing them again, he recalls the gatekeeper saying his parents were originally from this world. He decides to trace their past and follow in their footsteps, which means visiting a human village as soon as possible. Sometime later, out in the forest, a dwarf is seen fleeing from a giant spider. Back in the subspace, the orcs ask Makoto for help with a massive tree blocking their construction efforts. Makoto infuses his dagger with magic, slices the tree down, uses physical enhancement magic on himself, and lifts the giant log with ease. He begins to understand his powers better. His first power is magic, which consumes mana, like elemental magic, while his second power, the one granted by the gatekeeper, he names Kai. Kai consumes no mana at all, which he proved when he used it around Shen and she couldn't even sense his presence. He notices an injured orc and heals him using Kai. However, when he tries to use it on himself, it fails, and he can't seem to use standard healing magic on himself either. His train of thought is interrupted when Shen enters carrying the injured dwarf who was fleeing the spider. She explains that a terrifying monster is pursuing them. Suddenly, without warning, the dimensions barrier shatters, and a colossal spider bursts into the subspace. Makoto panics and asks Shen to handle it, but she makes excuses about carrying an injured person. The dwarf reveals that this creature is the Calamity Spider, a legendary monster with an insatiable hunger. Makoto decides to take it down himself. Drawing his dagger, he easily severs one of its legs and coats his weapon in fire magic. But before he can strike, the spider drops from above and attacks with its webs. Makoto dodges just in time, only to notice the severed leg instantly regenerating. He cuts off the rest of its legs, but they keep regenerating. He bombards it with fire spells, but nothing works. Strangely, the spider starts enjoying Makoto's incredible power, deriving pleasure from the pain he inflicts. It begins absorbing the ambient mana, healing itself, and even manages to bite Makoto and drink his blood. Losing his temper, Makoto releases his full power, triggering a massive explosion that shakes the entire subspace. He attacks the spider ruthlessly, finishing the fight with a devastating water arrow spell that disintegrates the spider's body into pieces. Exhausted, Makoto collapses to the ground. Shen notices the spider is somehow still alive and wraps Makoto in webs. She rushes to save him, only to find the spider cuddling Makoto, completely enamored with his strength. Turns out the spider is female. Shen attacks her, freeing Makoto. It turns out the two monsters know each other. The spider is amazed that Shen has a human form, and Shen explains it's due to her contract with Makoto. Seeing how much the spider adores him, Shen suggests she form a contract with him too, and that's exactly what happens. Later, Makoto wakes up in a strange room, amazed to find his body completely healed. A beautiful girl greets him, introducing herself as the Black Spider, revealing she assumed this form after making a contract with him. Makoto is stunned, thinking contracts required mutual consent. Shen enters alongside the rescued dwarf, who turns out to be an elder dwarf from a legendary lineage of master blacksmiths. The elder bows before Makoto, thanking him for defeating the spider and saving his village. He asks if his people can move into Makoto's territory, and Makoto instantly agrees. Shen steps in and adds a condition. They must swear allegiance to Makoto, craft powerful weapons, and pay taxes. The elder accepts all terms and asks for 2 days to convince his tribe, so Shen gives him dragon scales to make the process easier. Makoto steps outside the subspace to resume his search for the nearest human settlement. After a long trek, he finally spots a village in the distance. Before he can head over, Shen summons him back to the subspace, where she and the Black Spider are waiting. They request that he give them proper names now that he is their master. Shen already has a name, but she insists on a new one. After some thought, Makoto names her Tomo, after a legendary female samurai from his world. Tomo glows with power as her stats surge from the new name. Next, he names the spider Mio, who is equally thrilled. Makoto then stands in disbelief before a massive line of strange creatures. These are the current residents of the subspace, the Elder Dwarves, the Blue Lizards, Tomo's personal servants, skilled in water and wind magic, Mio's spider kin, and the orcs. All these races now live under Makoto's rule, swearing absolute loyalty to him. Makoto tells them to make themselves at home, as he needs to head out to the human village. Determined to meet actual humans, Makoto approaches a pretty girl near the village entrance and calls out to her. But the moment she sees his face, she screams in horror and runs away. Makoto is crushed, wondering if he's really that ugly. Hoping it was just a misunderstanding, he enters the village, only to find the townsfolk lined up and armed for war. They can't understand his words, calling him a monster and opening fire. Makoto retreats quickly, shielding himself with magic and wondering why they can't communicate. He suddenly realizes the goddess's gift allowed him to speak every language except the human language. He hates her now more than ever. He returns to his tent in utter depression. Emma, Mio, and Tomo gather to comfort him and figure out what went wrong. Tomo and Mio are confused as to why he couldn't speak the human tongue since they can speak it just fine. Emma then reveals the second issue. The humans weren't just reacting to his face, but to his terrifyingly massive mana aura, which made him look like a demon lord from afar. Emma suggests he suppress his mana. Makoto tries, but Mio notes his power is still overwhelming. Realizing this, Makoto vows to learn the human language and find a way to conceal his aura. A week passes, proving that suppressing his aura is far easier said than done. An elder dwarf crafts him a ring designed to absorb magic, but the moment Makoto puts it on, it shatters from the raw volume of his power. A month later, Makoto discovers he can write using his mana instead of speaking, deciding to use written text to communicate with humans. The dwarf returns with a much stronger ring, which successfully absorbs enough mana to lower his visible aura. Dressed in a mask to avoid drawing attention, Makoto takes Mio and Tomo with him into the human village, posing as merchants. They head straight to the Adventurers Guild to get registered. The receptionist is suspicious of Makoto's strange attire, so they fabricate a backstory. Makoto is the heir to a major trading company who was struck by a curse, forcing him to wear a mask and communicate solely through writing. The receptionist explains the quest and ranking system, then asks for his merchant guild license. Makoto claims he lost it, so she tells him he'll need to go to the city of Tsaich to renew it. To issue adventurer licenses, she brings out a magic measurement scroll. The standard scroll caps out at level 400, which isn't high enough for Tomo and Mio. When they bring out a high-grade scroll, the receptionist is horrified to see Mio at level 1500 and Tomo at level 1320. Tomo gets annoyed that her level is lower than Mio's, but the licenses are issued anyway. The receptionist is stunned. Their levels exceed the strongest registered adventurers in the guild. Tomo asks who the next highest adventurer is, and the receptionist mentions a warrior named Sophia, known as the Dragon Slayer. Next up is Makoto. When he touches the scroll, his level comes out as level 1, just like before. Depressed, he notices the crowd looking down on him as a fraud who relies on his powerful slaves. Ignoring the chatter, he books an inn. After resting, Makoto decides to go grab some food with Mio, leaving Tomo behind to guard their merchandise. Tomo complains, but Makoto insists, having noticed suspicious figures stalking them since morning who are clearly planning to steal their goods. That night, as Makoto and Mio head back, a young girl stops them in the street, crying and begging for help. Makoto takes her to their inn, where she introduces herself as Rainon. She explains that she and her older sister, Toa, traveled here as adventurers. However, they ran into financial trouble, were evicted due to debt, and her sister suddenly went missing. Makoto senses something shady going on in this town, especially tied to the stalkers from earlier. Meanwhile, a group of masked bandits attempts to rob their wagon. Tomo steps out to face them, trying to hold back so she doesn't kill them, and fails miserably, slaughtering them one by one. She leaves just one alive for interrogation and drags her back to Makoto. Makoto scolds Tomo for her savagery, only calming down when Rainon enters. Rainon hands Makoto a hand-drawn picture of her missing sister, Toa. The moment Makoto sees the drawing, his expression turns dead serious. Mio returns and uses memory extraction magic on the captured bandit. They discover an organized ring is behind this, the very same group that kidnapped Toa. And that brings us to the end of Season 1. Thank you all so much for watching and following along with the journey. If you enjoyed this series and want to see us dive right into Season 2, let's try to hit 100 likes on this video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with future recaps, and drop a comment below letting me know who your favorite character was this season. Thanks again for all your support, and I'll see you in the next one.